Your Excellency, you've established an extensive media mission in the United States. Did you have any role models for your work?
Well, I'd say Fulton Sheen, the great Archbishop from America, who did work in radio and television in the 1940s, 1950s. And one thing I remarked was, after Sheen, so he dies in the 1970s, his work was basically finished by the early 70s. But after Sheen, there was no one who had picked up the torch, for radio and TV. When I first started, it was before social media. So I was just hoping the classical media, radio and television. So I would say Sheen was my model. He still is, because Sheen combines, a popular appeal with a deep moral and intellectual formation. So Sheen was, very highly formed in Catholic philosophy and theology. And I had the same kind of academic background. So in that way, he's very much a model for me.
Could you tell us an episode showing that media mission today helps to convert hearts and open eyes for the message of Christ?
Well, I know it does, because we hear every day from people that are brought back to the faith because of what we've done. To me, one of the great things about the social media is it's like sowing seeds. So I might do a commentary on a film or on a book or on a political issue or something. I write a book, I write an article, we make major films, and all these things go out. You don't know where they're going to land. They land like seeds. And they grow sometimes in very unexpected ways. But we hear every single day from people that have been brought back to the faith because they were led more deeply by our work. So I think really it's the grace of God that we've been given this opportunity to use the social media creatively.
Let's talk about Josef-Pieper. What fascinated you about Josef-Pieper?
I first read Pieper when I was in high school, right? Maybe 16 or 17. Probably one of his books on the virtues. Then everyone in the Catholic world in America reads at some point Leisure, the Basis of Culture. I forget how it's entitled in German, the original. But the idea of moving beyond the workaday consciousness and to come to leisure, not in the sense of laziness, but in the sense of now openness to the grand questions. That book had a big impact on me. Then I read a lot of Pieper just in my years in seminary formation. I would recommend him to my students after I became a teacher because he's a very good way to get into St. Thomas Aquinas. His book, The Silence of St. Thomas, had a big impact on the way I read Aquinas. So Pieper has been a steady companion of mine for many years and someone I've relied on very much.
What would Josef-Pieper tell the Catholic Church today?
Probably what he told it, in his own lifetime. Returning to the great sources, Bible, the Fathers, especially Aquinas. I think opening up to this space which is beyond everyday consciousness, that we don't get caught up in the technological paradigm. We're not simply caught up in the practical world, that we're able to move in Plato's language outside the cave to see the higher realm. I think recovery of leisure in that sense, but then push it further, worship. Because the limit case of that for Pieper is the worship of God. I think he'd look around today especially and say the loss of worship has hugely negative cultural implications. And he'd be calling people back to first the philosophical mentality and then to worship.
How do you convince young people that it is worth reading Pieper's books?
By reading them. Or I might begin by sharing a few basic ideas from Pieper. And, he's a very deep, at the same time, accessible thinker. He writes, I must say, not in the typically German fashion, which is sentences this long. And Pieper writes, I think, in an accessible way, but very deeply, with great insight. So I would share some of those ideas, as I have over the years, and then urge people to get his books. They're widely available in English. They're relatively easy to read. They're a great introduction to the philosophical mind. But I would just share some of his basic ideas that are still very valid.
Do you think that there is any treasure in the work of Pieper that you personally would like to discover more in a more deeper way?
I know there is. I've been reading him for years, but in preparation for this event, I wrote a lengthy paper, and I reread a lot of Pieper, and I read some of his books for the first time. It would have been about a year ago, I suppose, last summer, and I loved it. I think during my vacation, I just took a lot of Pieper's books and I read through them, and I discovered all sorts of things I didn't know before. I think the link between leisure and worship, I saw that more clearly. I also saw God thinking the world into being, so that the intelligibility of the world, which all of science rests upon, in turn rests upon the conviction that God has thought the world into being. That's Thomas Aquinas. But Pieper makes that very clear. And that gripped me last summer. And I made that a central theme of my paper I'll deliver tomorrow.